One child stood alone by the grave that morning, whispering to the wind, "Daddy, why didn't you come sooner?" While snow blanketed the town and the church bells rang for a name long gone, no one saw the little girl, no one but him, the soldier who never knew he had a daughter. And the dog? He saw it first. He always does. What they uncovered in that frozen cemetery would unravel a lie, expose a monster, and awaken a love buried for 5 long years. But before we begin, tell me, which city are you watching from tonight? Tap that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and stay with us for stories that break and heal your heart, all in one breath. Snowfall Ridge wore winter like a funeral veil. The small town clung to the side of the Rockies, half buried in snow and memory. Its streets were hushed, its windows shuttered, and the graveyard to the north, on a hill overlooking a valley of frostbitten evergreens, lay frozen in silence. Wind swept through the trees like a warning, rattling the bare branches, lifting stray snowflakes into little tornadoes that died just as quickly as they formed. Logan Pierce parked his truck by the tree line and killed the engine. The windshield fogged briefly as he sat there, unmoving, staring out across the white expanse of gravestones. It had been 6 years since he last stepped foot in this town, longer since he'd seen her. He wasn't sure why he came back now. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was Ranger, the only thing left that still pulled him back toward anything human. Logan stepped into the snow. He was 45 now, though most wouldn't guess it. War had chiseled him down to bone and instinct. His frame was strong but lean, a body trained for survival, not comfort. His dark brown hair had thinned slightly at the temples, and a line of scar tissue crept along his right cheek. The weight he carried was less visible, a silence that clung to him, even now, like damp wool. Ranger landed beside him with a soft crunch, the 7-year-old German shepherd as sharp and alert as ever. His coat shimmered between black and tan, thick enough to withstand the Colorado cold. A faint streak of white had begun to form above his left eye, battle-earned gray. He moved with grace, but Logan had seen him bear down on enemies like a storm when needed. Ranger had saved his life more than once, had also stood between him and the edge of a rooftop the night Logan nearly lost to the ghosts in his head. They trudged up the hill, boots and paws breaking through the thin crust of ice. Logan carried nothing but a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, the only flowers he could find that weren't dead by this time of year. They were Grace's favorite. The stone appeared before he was ready for it. Grace Miller, 1986, 2023. She kept the light on. Logan knelt in front of the grave. The flowers in his hand trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from the weight in his chest. He rested them at the base of the stone. Snow had drifted over her name, and he brushed it off with bare fingers. Grace. She had been a light in a world full of blood and dust, a combat medic with a voice that could cut through chaos, a temper that could make generals sit up straight, and a smile that once made Logan forget he had scars. 5'5", all edges and kindness. Her skin always smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender. Her hands never shook, even under fire. But they'd broken apart. Not because of anger, not because of betrayal, but because of the news Logan had carried in silence for weeks. A diagnosis from the military clinic. Low sperm motility, possibly irreversible. The final word came wrapped in cold, clinical phrases. Functionally infertile. He hadn't known how to tell Grace. She wanted a family more than anything. And he couldn't give her one. So he did what soldiers do when they can't win. He retreated, packed his bags and left without explanation. Not to punish her, but to set her free. That's what he told himself. But standing there now, staring at the stone where her name was carved and final, he felt the full weight of the lie. She hadn't been free. She'd been alone. And now, she was gone. The wind stung his face. Ranger stood beside him, ears twitching, gaze fixed not on the grave, but beyond it. Then they heard her. A voice. So faint, the wind almost stole it. "Daddy, where are you?" Logan stood up slowly, heart hammering in his chest. Ranger moved first, padding forward a few steps, nose up, tail still. There, on the far side of the grave, partially hidden behind a crooked stone marker, sat a little girl. She wore no coat, no hat, only a thin, tattered pink dress that looked 2 sizes too small, with ripped lace at the hem and stains that looked like dried mud or worse. Her skin was flushed red from exposure, hands raw and trembling. Long, dark hair stuck to her tear-streaked face, and her legs were tucked beneath her in a desperate attempt to preserve warmth. Her face, it wasn't just dirty, it was forgotten. Forgotten by someone who should have cared. Her eyes darted constantly, left, right, over her shoulder, like she expected someone to snatch her away at any moment. But in that one instant, she wasn't running. She was whispering, "Daddy, please come now." She was staring directly at Grace's grave. Not at Logan, not at Ranger, at the stone. Neither of them moved. Logan felt the blood rush from his face. Ranger didn't growl, didn't bark. He only sat. The girl didn't notice them. Her small hands were pressed to the base of the stone. She leaned her forehead against it, rocking gently like a leaf caught in a trembling breeze. Her lips moved again, but the words were swallowed by snow. Logan's body felt like stone, frozen not by the cold, but by something deeper, something terrible and impossible. She couldn't be... He didn't finish the thought. He couldn't. Because just then, the girl lifted her head and looked right at them. For a long moment, no one moved. The girl's eyes, wide and too old for her age, met Logan's across the snow-covered grave. Ranger stood still at his side, muscles tense but unmoving, his ears angled toward the girl. The wind hissed between the gravestones, but the rest of the world held its breath. Then she blinked, slowly, and turned back to the headstone. Her lips trembled. She whispered something Logan couldn't hear. And then, without a word, she pressed her face against the stone, small shoulders shaking. She began to cry, quietly at first, then harder, as if something in her had finally given out. Logan wanted to go to her, but something held him back. He didn't know her, and yet he did. Somehow the pain in her voice, the way she said "Daddy," it struck too close, too deep. Ranger tilted his head and whined softly, sensing the hesitation. The girl cried for maybe a minute, maybe more. Time slowed under the weight of her sobs. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. She wiped her nose with the back of her sleeve, stood up shakily, and turned away. Her bare legs were red from the cold, feet covered in thin socks and old shoes that left small indentations in the snow as she walked. Her pink dress fluttered in the wind, torn at the hem, one strap slipping off her shoulder. She didn't look back. Logan didn't follow. He stayed beside Grace's grave, watching the girl disappear behind a row of cedars near the edge of the cemetery. Ranger finally sat, his tail brushing against the snow, letting out a low huff of concern. Then came the crunch of footsteps. From behind the trees to Logan's left, an older man approached slowly, leaning heavily on a curved wooden cane. He wore a navy parka, corduroy pants tucked into thick boots, and a woolen cap pulled down over white-gray hair. His face was deeply lined, his beard short and patchy, as if grown in defiance of age rather than fashion. "Mr. Pierce?" the man asked, voice gravelly but gentle. Logan turned. "Yeah?" "Name's Walter Ames. I'm the caretaker here, gravekeeper. Been doing this job longer than I care to count." Walter came to a stop a few feet away, breathing heavily. His eyes, though clouded with age, were observant, sharp in a way that spoke of years spent watching people grieve. "I recognized you," Walter said. "Grace showed me a picture once. Said you were the one man who made her laugh after a triage shift." Logan's jaw tightened. "I didn't know she had a daughter." Walter looked toward the direction the girl had gone. "She comes here every week. Always sits by that grave. Doesn't talk to anyone. Just cries. Then she leaves. Like clockwork." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "Found this a few days ago. Someone dropped it near Grace's stone. No return address. Figured if anyone had the right to see it, it'd be you." Logan took the envelope cautiously and opened it. Inside was a faded photograph, bent at the corners. It showed Grace lying in a hospital bed, wearing a light blue gown, holding a newborn wrapped in white flannel. She looked tired but radiant, her eyes steady, cradling the infant as though nothing else in the world mattered. Next to her stood a tall, middle-aged man in a white coat, silver hair, and rectangular glasses. On the back of the photo, scrawled in blue ink, St. Mercy Hospital, January 3rd, 2018. Logan's breath caught. He stared at the photo for several seconds, then at the date. 2018. That was almost a year after he left. Walter leaned on his cane. I've seen a lot of men cry in this place. Don't think less of yourself if you do. Logan shook his head. Do you know who the man in the photo is? Looks like Dr. Keller. Ran the maternity wing back in the day at St. Mercy. Retired now, I think. Still lives out by Evergreen Creek, last I heard. Logan nodded. He slipped the photo back into the envelope, folded it carefully, and placed it inside his coat. Ranger moved suddenly, sniffing near the edge of the grave. He circled once, then darted toward a clump of half-buried bushes. With a soft bark, he pawed at something under the snow. Logan followed. Brushing aside the frost, he found a small knitted cap, pale purple, stretched, and old. A few strands of light brown hair were tangled in the weave. Logan held it up. His gut twisted. He had seen that hair before, on Grace, on himself. He said nothing, just looked at Ranger. We're doing this, aren't we? He muttered. Ranger didn't respond, but his eyes, calm, sure, held steady on Logan's face. That night, back in his rented cabin on the outskirts of town, Logan spread the photo, the cap, and a letter he hadn't read in years onto the wooden table. The letter was written in Grace's hand, sent to him after his first deployment, back when hope was still something they carried. One line jumped out now, more than it ever had. If you ever come back and I'm not there, know that my heart stayed with you. He folded the letter, breath catching in his throat. The following morning, Logan drove to the closest regional clinic. The nurse at the front desk raised an eyebrow when he placed a sealed plastic bag on the counter. I need a DNA test. Compare this hair sample to mine, as fast as possible. She looked at him, then at Ranger, who sat patiently behind his chair. Relationship test? She asked. He nodded. Paternal. Meanwhile, back in Snowfall Ridge, the little girl with the torn pink dress returned to a place she called home, but it didn't look like one. The building was gray, squat, and institutional. It bore the name Haven House Center for Children. The woman at the front desk, Sarah Quinn, watched the girl enter with a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. Sarah was in her early 30s, tall and narrow-shouldered, with a pale, freckled face and red hair, always pulled into a severe ponytail. Her demeanor was polite but distant. She'd once been a foster child herself, moved through the system too many times to believe in comfort or kindness. Her voice was always flat, her eyes always guarded. You're late, Emma, Sarah said. The girl flinched. I'm sorry. Where were you? I just went to see her. Sarah sighed. Go get cleaned up. You look like you rolled in a snowbank. Emma disappeared down the hallway, her shoulders hunched, steps uncertain. From the end of the corridor, a man emerged. He was tall, dressed in a gray wool coat and thin black gloves. His hair was neatly combed, dark with a slight wave. His face, clean-shaven, sharp-jawed, symmetrical, had the cold precision of someone who liked control. Victor Harlan. He spoke softly. She went back to the cemetery again? Sarah nodded. Same time. Every week. Victor's mouth twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Let's make sure next week. She doesn't. Snowfall Ridge didn't thaw. By the time Logan returned to town 2 days after submitting the DNA test, the snow had grown deeper, and the sky wore a constant bruise of gray. The roads were quieter, the town more withdrawn, if that was possible, and the building labeled Haven House Center for Children remained as anonymous as ever. It stood between an abandoned clinic and a post office that never opened on time. There were no playgrounds, no murals, just cement, gray paint, and silence. Logan sat in his truck half a block away, coat zipped up to his neck, one hand absently scratching behind Ranger's ears. The shepherd sat alert in the passenger seat, ears perked forward, head tilted, tail still. He'd worn the same expression in Afghanistan when sniffing near an IED. Logan reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a laminated card. Ray Coleman, Veterans Advocacy Group, Donor Outreach. The ID was fake but convincing, printed using old connections from his deployment days. The jacket he wore bore a simple gold pin, an insignia used by some veteran support initiatives, untraceable, but enough to suggest status. His face, unshaven and slightly sunken, looked like someone who had seen too much and donated even more. Let's go, he muttered. Inside Haven House, the air was too clean, too dry, artificial. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. Sarah Quinn was at the front desk, dressed in a dark green cardigan over a gray turtleneck, her hair in the same tight ponytail. Her sharp face, freckled and pale, looked up as he entered. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice flat. Logan smiled mildly, keeping his eyes tired but approachable. "Ray Coleman, Veterans Advocacy Group. We're looking into expanding donations to smaller shelters, especially ones with high behavior standards. I heard good things about Haven House." Sarah hesitated, scanning his badge. "We weren't told anyone was coming." Logan gestured to Ranger, who sat beside him obediently. "He's part of the therapy branch. Kids tend to talk to dogs before they talk to adults." She glanced at Ranger, her gaze uncertain, and stood up. "Wait here. I'll let Mr. Harlan know." She disappeared down a hallway, heels clicking on linoleum. Ranger looked up at Logan, eyes sharp. "I know," Logan whispered. "Too easy." 2 minutes later, Victor Harlan arrived. He looked exactly the same as in the cemetery. Gray wool coat, black gloves, dark hair combed meticulously back. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Coleman," he greeted, extending a hand. Logan shook it briefly. Victor's grip was soft and dry. "I wasn't expecting donors in person this week," Victor said, "but of course, we're happy to accommodate. Haven House appreciates those who support our cause." "I'd love to see the facility," Logan said. "Get a real sense of the place." Victor hesitated for a beat too long, then nodded. "Of course. Follow me." He led them through a series of clean but sterile hallways. The rooms were labeled by letters: A1, B3, D5. Each had a small window, but curtains drawn. Children's laughter was noticeably absent. Logan noted every camera, every blind corner. Ranger's nose twitched constantly, head turning slightly as they walked. Near one door, C4, Ranger stopped, let out a soft growl, and sat. Victor turned. "Dogs don't usually react that way here." "He's not trained for usual," Logan replied. Victor moved on. "This is where we do enrichment sessions. We teach order, calm, and good citizenship. Our children are prepared for adoption through structure." Logan kept his face neutral, though his stomach twisted. As they passed a maintenance door, Victor's phone buzzed. "Excuse me a moment," he said, stepping away. Logan waited until he was out of sight, then crouched beside the utility door. Locked. He pulled a small tool from his coat sleeve, jammed it in. With 2 clicks, the door eased open. He slipped inside, Ranger behind him. The stairwell led downward, bare concrete steps, unpainted walls. The air grew colder, heavier. At the base of the stairs, another hallway. This one unmarked. Fluorescent lights flickered. Ranger moved first, nose low, then turned left toward a door without a label. Logan opened it. Inside, the basement was cluttered. Files, old boxes, medical charts stacked haphazardly. Ranger nosed at a corner near a rusted floor vent and let out a sharp bark. Logan knelt beside him, a floor panel, slightly raised. He pried it up. Inside, a small metal box wrapped in plastic. Logan opened it. A necklace, steel chain with a round silver charm, engraved Grace M. And beneath it, a folded note. His hands shook slightly as he unfolded it. "If Logan comes back, please tell him. Emma is his. I only hid the truth to protect her. He deserved better. But so did she. No signature. But the handwriting was unmistakable. Grace's." Logan swallowed hard. His jaw clenched. Ranger sat quietly beside him, unmoving, as if understanding the magnitude of what had just been found. Footsteps echoed above. Logan closed the box, slipped it into his coat. He took a quick glance through the room and spotted a metal filing cabinet labeled Foreign Transfer Clearance Pending. Inside were folders, each stamped with barcodes, each tagged with a child's initials and a destination. Germany, Morocco, Argentina. One folder, EGM, Emma Grace Miller. Logan pulled out his body cam, a small black square hidden in Ranger's collar, and tapped twice. The light blinked red. Everything now recorded. He snapped photos of the documents, then returned the folder exactly as it was. From above, Victor's voice. "Mr. Coleman, you still with us?" Logan exited the room, closed the door behind him, and returned to the upper hallway with Ranger. Victor appeared seconds later, his smile unchanged. Apologies. Sometimes staff need guidance. No worries, Logan replied coolly. The place is quiet. Victor's gaze lingered. We teach discipline. Logan nodded once, politely. You'll hear from my foundation. Looking forward to it. They shook hands again. Ranger growled softly as Victor stepped back. Logan smiled for the first time that day. Snowfall Ridge woke to freezing fog, the kind that rolled in silently at dawn and lingered long into morning like the town had secrets it didn't want seen. Logan stood outside the clinic, gloves buried deep in his coat pockets, breath visible in short puffs. Ranger sat at his heel, calm but alert, a subtle tension in his posture. The snow had crusted overnight, crisp on the surface, yet soft enough beneath to swallow footprints. They'd left no trail coming in, but they would leave one going out. Inside, the nurse with cropped gray hair and coffee breath met him at the desk. She didn't waste time. A plain manila envelope slid across the counter. You said urgent, so we rushed it. She looked over her glasses. Paternal match, 99.998%. No doubts. Logan didn't respond, just stared at the words on the page like they were a wound. Emma was his. The nurse leaned forward, voice softer now. Congratulations. Or, I guess, I'm sorry. Hard to tell with your face. He offered the faintest of nods, took the envelope, and left. Back at the cabin, the fireplace burned low. Ranger paced once, then sniffed the bag near the door, where Logan kept supplies and trail snacks. He whined. Logan crouched. What is it? Ranger stepped back, nose twitching. Logan unzipped the bag. Inside was a vacuum-sealed pouch of beef jerky, one of Ranger's favorites, but the scent was off. A sharp chemical tang under the smoked salt. He didn't hesitate. He tossed the entire pouch into the metal trash bin, covered it, and took it outside. Someone had tried to poison his dog. Victor, he muttered, you're getting desperate. The next hours moved like loaded gunfire. Logan sat at the cabin's long oak table, sorting evidence. The DNA results, the forged papers signed under Linda, the scanned documents from the hidden files, foreign transfers, name changes, false mental evaluations. In the corner, a monitor showed stills from Ranger's collar cam, the basement box, the medical necklace, the folder labeled EGM. He opened the final drawer in the desk and pulled out the old field radio. Dust clung to the corners. It hadn't been used since his last deployment. He turned the knob, static blooming like ghosts. Then a voice. This is Pierce, Logan. Unit 112 Bravo. I need a contact. Legal or press, non-military, not traceable. A long pause. Then, still breathing, old man? Sending name. An hour later, a new contact pinged his encrypted email. May Whitlock, independent investigative journalist, former Army intel. Logan stared at the name. He remembered her. Short, biracial woman with close-cropped curls and a sharper mind than most field captains. She'd left after a mission went south, and no one took accountability. Logan had respected her ever since. He hit send, a detailed file of every document, photo, and video. He CC'd a lawyer he barely knew but trusted. Eric Madsen, ex-JAG officer turned whistleblower attorney, bald, sharp-tongued, and relentless. He sent it all. Then he stood. Ranger had gone still near the corner of the room. Logan walked over. What is it, boy? The shepherd scratched lightly at a floor panel beneath the coat rack. Logan pried it up. Inside, another small safe, metal, dented, with a broken latch. He forced it open. Passports. Dozens. All fake. Children's names, ages, mismatched photos. Some were printed in Cyrillic. Others bore French, Portuguese, even Thai. Many had scribbled corrections in red pen. And near the bottom, one with Emma's picture. But the name read, Elise Granger, age 6, destination, Luxembourg. Logan stared, eyes burning. A cold weight settled in his gut. This wasn't just corruption, it was trafficking. Organized, clean, almost invisible. He bagged the entire safe's contents and returned to the table. His fingers trembled as he unfolded one more thing. Grace's last letter. The lines were faded from handling, but the words hit fresh every time. I know you left because you thought you were protecting me, but I never needed protection from you. I needed the man who held my hand that night in Kandahar, who whispered that family could be more than blood. The memory hit like shrapnel. He was 39 then. She, 32. They'd fought in the rain outside a military outpost hospital, him in uniform, her still in scrubs with blood on her sleeves. She had asked him, again, about trying for a child, and he'd exploded. I can't give you a damn thing, Grace. Not a name, not a home, not even a future. She had stood there in silence, the rain making rivers down her cheeks, not sure if they were tears. I never asked for guarantees, she said, only that you stay. But he hadn't. Logan gripped the letter. 6 years lost. 6 years Emma had lived without a father. Never again. He reached for the burner phone, dialed May Whitlock. She answered on the second ring. Pierce, she said, you better not be dead. Got something for you. The kind of story that burns cities down. There was a pause. Talk! As he spoke, Ranger sat beside him, staring out the frost-glazed window. Outside, the wind howled. The storm was only just beginning. By sunrise, the storm had calmed, but the real avalanche was just beginning. Logan stood in the middle of his cabin, phone buzzing on the counter, tablet flashing new alerts every 10 seconds. The video from Ranger's chest cam had hit the internet less than 12 hours ago. Now, it was everywhere. The footage showed a stark, unfiltered view into the basement of Haven House, folders stamped with red transfers, Emma's falsified passport, and Logan's gloved hands lifting the medical tag bearing Grace's name. There was no narration, no commentary, just truth in raw form, and Ranger's soft growl beneath every second. Across the cabin, Ranger rested near the fireplace, eyes open, watching. On screen, a news anchor with perfect teeth and an icy smile addressed the camera. Was it courage or delusion? Former Army operative Logan Pierce breaks into a children's center with a combat dog, claims it's hiding in a legal adoption ring. Some call him a hero, others unstable. Tonight at 6, we ask, should this man be trusted? Logan turned off the sound, his jaw flexed once. Then his phone buzzed again. May Whitlock, the screen read. He answered. They're splitting, she said without preamble. Half the press calls you a grieving father. The other half thinks you've lost your mind. I expected worse. They're digging into your record, PTSD evaluations, injuries, even the time you were investigated after that blast in Mosul. I was cleared. Doesn't matter. Truth isn't the game, narrative is. Victor's already fed the networks copies of restraining orders filed under Grace's alias, Linda. He's spinning you as a stalker who couldn't let go. Logan's stomach churned. She was hiding from him, not me. May exhaled. I know. I'm working with Eric to get a court injunction, but you'll need more than documents. You need someone who was there. Almost on cue, another call lit up. Unknown number. Logan picked up. The voice was soft, tired, but unmistakably kind. My name is Anna Donnelly. I was a nurse at St. Mercy. Grace, she was my patient the day Emma was born. Logan straightened. Why are you calling me? She made me promise. If she didn't come back, if something happened, I was to find you. She said, if I don't make it home, tell Logan he has a daughter. His throat tightened. Anna continued. I kept that letter, tried to send it, but then I was fired. Victor pressured the hospital, said I was compromising patient confidentiality. They called it interference. I lost everything. Logan's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. No, she said. I'm ready to help now. I'll testify if it comes to that. He gave her Eric's number and thanked her before hanging up. Outside, Ranger stood abruptly and padded to the back door, hackles up. Logan followed. The snow behind the cabin had crusted over with the night's frost, but now a series of prints marred its clean surface. Human footprints, unfamiliar tread, leading to the old wooden shed behind the trees. Ranger growled low. Logan signaled for him to stay behind, but the shepherd moved ahead, ears sharp. He reached the shed first, sniffed the doorframe, then stepped back. Logan drew the sidearm he hadn't used since his last tour. Slowly he opened the door. Inside, dark, dusty. Just an old snowblower, some broken chairs, and blood. A smear of it near the far corner, still fresh. Not much, but enough. Ranger moved forward cautiously, nose to the floor. He barked once, then turned to Logan with urgency. "Someone was here," Logan muttered, "and they didn't leave clean." He shut the door, locked it, and called the sheriff's department. Again. But no one picked up. The local lines were down, or worse, silenced. Later that afternoon, a white van pulled into his snowy drive. The side read, "Channel 8 News, live on scene." Out stepped a woman in a long beige coat, sleek dark hair pulled into a neat bun, mid-30s, olive skin, eyes sharp behind thin gold-rimmed glasses. "Logan Pierce?" she asked, extending a gloved hand. "My name's Natalie Cho. I'd like to ask you about your dog." Ranger tilted his head, then trotted up to sniff her boots. She smiled. "He's a hero, you know. Everyone online's talking about him. That footage, over 2 million views in 12 hours. Logan kept his expression guarded. "Why do you want to talk to him?" "Not just him, your story, but through him." Natalie gestured to a cameraman unloading gear. "Kids trust dogs. So do the elderly. If I frame this right, people will stop listening to Victor and start listening to the truth. I want to interview Ranger, with you." Ranger looked up at Logan. He sighed. "Okay, one interview, but no baiting." "No baiting," Natalie promised. They filmed on the porch. Ranger sat with his chest out, ears perked. Logan knelt beside him, answering questions about how they met in combat, how the dog had saved his life twice, once in battle, once after. "He was the reason I didn't pull the trigger on myself in 2020, Logan said quietly. "He stayed with me when everyone else was gone." "And now?" Natalie asked. "Now he's saving someone else." Later that night, as the cabin grew quiet, Logan sat by the fire with Ranger's head resting on his thigh. The flickering light played across the medical tag still in his coat pocket, the forged passport locked in a drawer, and the printed DNA result clipped to the corkboard. Outside, another snow began to fall, soft and silent. But inside, the war was raging. Tomorrow, he would walk into court and file a petition to gain full custody of Emma Miller. He wasn't just fighting for truth anymore. He was fighting to be her father. The snow had thickened overnight into a white curtain that wrapped around the courthouse like a shroud. Snowfall Ridge's modest courthouse, a brick structure with stone columns and a faded American flag flapping weakly above the entrance, stood half-buried in silence. But inside, tension pulsed through the air. Logan arrived with Ranger at his side, both of them cutting striking figures against the snow. Logan wore a tailored gray coat, clean-shaven with hair pulled back into a low tie. The lines around his eyes had deepened since his return to the town, carved not by age, but by memory. His eyes were steady, though a current of grief still lived beneath the surface. Ranger, now 8 years old, wore a black harness marked with silver tags, his ears alert and his body leaning toward Logan like an unspoken vow. The courtroom was already half full. Reporters sat in the back, whispering to each other over coffee and camera flashes. On one bench sat May Whitlock and Eric Madsen. May, in a dark green turtleneck and leather coat, taking notes on her phone. Eric, bald with a broad, clean face and square shoulders, flipping through a legal binder with soldier-like precision. Victor Harlan sat opposite them, dressed in a designer coat that didn't belong in this town. The man was in his early 50s, tall and lean, his salt and pepper hair slicked back with practiced arrogance. His tan complexion glowed unnaturally under courtroom lighting. He wore a faint smirk, one that never quite reached his cold blue eyes. Seated beside him was his lawyer, Pamela Kearns, a polished woman in her 40s, tall and narrow-faced with hawkish features, and a voice like wet gravel. She was known in the capital for getting scoundrels out of scandals. The judge, Honorable Miriam Caldwell, entered briskly. Late 50s, short and solidly built, her silver hair pinned in a tight bun. She looked like a woman who tolerated no nonsense. "Mr. Logan Pierce," she said, flipping open a file. "You filed for emergency guardianship over a minor child, Emma Miller, citing forged documentation, trafficking suspicion, and direct familial DNA confirmation. You've submitted video evidence, personal testimony, and a witness list. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Logan replied, standing. "And I have new expert testimony today." Judge Caldwell gestured. "Proceed." First came Dr. Alan Reeve, a handwriting analyst from the State Bureau. Mid-60s, stooped but sharp, he carried himself with quiet confidence. "The signature on this document," he said, lifting Grace's supposed waiver, "does not match known samples of Grace Miller's handwriting. It's a forgery, likely traced from a previous medical file." Victor's lawyer objected, but the judge waved it off. Then came Anna Donnelly. The former nurse walked in slowly, petite, olive-skinned, with short chestnut hair and soft eyes. She clutched a paper envelope. "I was there when Grace gave birth," Anna said, voice trembling. "She was scared. She spoke of Logan over and over. She never wanted to give up her child. She was threatened, isolated." She held up the envelope. "This is the letter Grace tried to send." It was entered into evidence. Then May stood. "Your Honor, I would like to submit recent findings from our investigation into Haven House. These include photos of altered child documents, logs of international transfers under falsified humanitarian visas, and financial routing numbers traced to accounts offshore." The courtroom fell silent. Then Logan stepped forward with Ranger beside him. "Emma doesn't know everything yet," he said, "but she knows me and she knows Ranger. She came to Grace's grave every week, alone, just to whisper one word: Daddy. Not Victor, not anyone else." At that moment, the side door opened. Emma stepped in, clutching a teddy bear. She wore a small blue coat, 2 sizes too big, and mismatched gloves. Her cheeks were flushed with cold. Behind her was a social worker named Ellen Fry, late 30s, ginger hair tied up in a loose bun, no makeup, warm gray eyes, and a gentle but tired smile. Emma spotted Logan. Her steps quickened. Then she saw Ranger. "Ranger!" she cried, her voice piercing the heavy silence. The German Shepherd rose immediately and trotted forward. Emma ran into him, burying her face in his fur. Then she turned to Logan. "Daddy!" There was a hush. Even the judge looked briefly shaken. Victor stood abruptly. "She's confused. She's a traumatized child." But Ranger turned. He walked straight to Victor and stopped. He stared. And then, with every muscle taut, the shepherd let out a deep, guttural growl. The kind that didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like judgment. Victor froze. The judge banged her gavel once. "Order!" Before recess could be called, another voice broke in. "I want to testify." It was a teenage girl, 16, maybe 17, pale, with long blonde hair and eyes too old for her age. She wore a frayed coat and jeans with a tear across the knee. "Your name?" the judge asked. "Maddie Lee. I used to live at Haven House." Pamela Kearns objected, but the judge allowed it. Maddie took the stand, her voice steady. "I saw what they did to Grace. They said if she didn't sign, she'd be sent away, to some hospital. They said she was unfit. She cried so hard. But she signed. And then they changed Emma's name, gave her to Victor." "Did you ever see children disappear from the home?" Maddie nodded slowly. "They called it transfers. Said they were adopted overseas, but some didn't even speak the language, and then they were gone." Logan's hands clenched. Judge Caldwell looked at Victor, then down at the evidence on her bench. The gavel came down. "This court will enter all documentation into formal review. Emma Miller will remain in the protective custody of Logan Pierce pending final ruling. Mr. Harlan, a formal investigation into your organization has been initiated by the district attorney's office." Victor stood, face pale now. As he turned to leave, Ranger barked sharply, once. Victor flinched. The courtroom felt different that morning, less like a battlefield and more like a sanctuary waiting for a bell to toll. Snow still lined the courthouse steps, but it had begun to melt under a rare burst of sun, creating slow rivulets of water that trickled down the stone like tears thawed too late. Inside, Logan sat at the plaintiff's table in a clean navy suit. His shoulders were squared, not in defiance, but in quiet readiness. Beside him sat Emma, her hair now brushed neatly into 2 braids. She wore a pink cardigan over a white blouse and kept her hand tucked beneath Ranger's massive paw, which rested across her lap like a protective shield. The German Shepherd, ever regal, had been brushed and bathed. At nearly 9 years old, his dark coat still gleamed, and the scar above his left eye, earned in Kandahar, gave him the appearance of a soldier still watching the world with vigilance. His presence had become a symbol beyond loyalty. To the townspeople, he was the dog who stood between silence and truth. Judge Miriam Caldwell entered the room, her robes crisp, her hair a steel halo beneath the courtroom lights. The gallery hushed as she took her seat. "This court," she began, voice measured, "has reviewed the evidence submitted over the past 10 days. Video documentation, DNA reports, witness statements, and a forensic handwriting analysis. It has also heard testimony from both sides, including the minor child in question." She paused, her eyes landing briefly on Emma. "In light of these facts, and with full regard to the best interest of the child, this court rules in favor of Mr. Logan Pierce. He is hereby granted full legal guardianship of Emma Grace Miller, effective immediately." The room let out a breath. Emma turned to Logan, her small hand gripping his wrist. He looked at her, really looked, and saw something that broke and healed him at once. Trust. The gavel came down. It wasn't over. Not yet. At the defense table, Victor Harlan's expression curdled. He stood too quickly, knocking a pen from the desk. His lawyer reached for his sleeve, whispering urgently, but Victor shook her off and turned to face the judge. "This is absurd," he snapped. "That child's unstable. Her mother was delusional, and this man was a war casualty who never readjusted." "Mr. Harlan," the judge said coolly, "you are out of order." At that moment, 2 federal agents entered from the side of the room. Both wore black windbreakers with DHS emblems stitched in yellow. One of them, Agent Renee Walsh, was a tall black woman with cropped hair, late 40s, built like a retired sprinter. The other, Agent Miguel Torres, was broad-shouldered with olive skin, thick eyebrows, and a steely voice that rarely raised above a murmur. "Victor Harlan," Agent Walsh said, stepping forward, "you are under arrest for child trafficking, document forgery, and abuse of federal adoption funds. You have the right to remain silent." Victor took a step back, eyes darting toward the gallery. "Don't!" Torres warned. Victor bolted. He made it 3 steps before Ranger surged to his feet and leapt. The shepherd didn't bite. He didn't need to. He landed between Victor and the exit, hackles raised, blocking the path like a gate that no one would cross without reckoning. Victor froze, chest heaving. Officers tackled him to the floor seconds later. As they dragged him out, Ranger sat, tail curled neatly, gaze calm. His eyes followed Victor until the door shut with a heavy thud. Justice didn't always wear a robe. Sometimes it had 4 legs and a steady growl. After the trial, Logan, Emma, and Ranger exited the courthouse into the thin sunlight. News crews crowded outside, but they pushed through quietly, taking the back steps toward the parking lot. Logan had parked the old Ford SUV beside a snowbank, where Ranger's blanket and Emma's booster seat waited. Before they climbed in, Emma tugged at Logan's sleeve. "Can we go home now?" He crouched beside her. "Yes, we're going home." "But not the gray place, right? Not Haven?" "No," he said, "never again." As they approached the gate of Haven House later that day, this time for the final retrieval of Emma's things, a chain-link fence stood locked. A bright yellow placard read, "Property sealed, federal hold." Ranger sat at the edge of the snow-crusted lawn. Emma held his leash. She looked up at Logan. "Can I say goodbye?" He nodded. She walked to the fence and stared at the crumbling bricks, the rusted swings, the windows she had watched snowfall through for too many nights. "I used to talk to the wind here," she whispered. "Pretend it was Mom." Ranger whined gently. Emma reached down and patted his head. "She told me, if Daddy ever came back, I should forgive him." Logan swallowed something thick. Behind them, a woman in a long gray coat watched quietly. Natalie Cho, the journalist. Her face was softer today, touched by the cold and the moment. She didn't raise her camera. She just watched the final chapter close. As they turned to leave, Ranger paused. He glanced over his shoulder at the building behind them. Then, with the kind of clarity only dogs knew, he lifted his head and let out a long, echoing bark. A farewell. A warning. A cleansing. And then he trotted forward, tail swaying, toward a future none of them had expected. But all 3 were ready to claim. Snow fell with the softness of forgiveness, blanketing the world outside Logan's cabin in thick, soundless white. The house, a 1-story log structure with a sloping roof and smoke curling from the chimney, sat nestled in the dense pine woods like a secret kept between mountains and sky. This was where the story came to rest, not with fanfare, but with warmth. Inside, a wood stove glowed softly in the corner, casting long shadows across hand-hewn floorboards. The walls, once bare and cold, now held life. A faded quilt covered the worn couch. A mug steamed quietly beside a half-built model airplane on the table, and two photographs had found a home above the fireplace. One was of Grace, smiling in her nurse's scrubs, her hazel eyes calm, hair pulled back beneath a red bandana. The other was a new one, Logan, Emma, and Ranger sitting together on the front porch, her pink boots resting on his knee, Ranger leaning into them like he belonged there. Logan moved through the small kitchen, sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly longer now and dusted with flour. He had learned to bake. Not well, but enough. Tonight's dinner was mac and cheese, Emma's request, and homemade biscuits that looked more like craters than clouds. His hands, once used to loading rifles and cleaning carbines, now peeled apples and tied shoelaces. He was still learning how to be a father. Some days it was easy, holding her hand through snowdrifts, teaching her to skip rocks, listening to her soft giggles as she sang to Ranger. Other days, it was like walking through fog, when her eyes clouded with fear or her little shoulders stiffened at sudden sounds. Emma had changed, but not completely. She was 5, after all. Her cheeks still dimpled when she laughed. Her eyes still searched the world with wonder. But there were nights, always winter nights, when she'd wake up screaming. Those nights, Logan didn't speak. He just picked her up, wrapped her in the big green blanket, and sat beside the fireplace. Ranger never left her side. The old German shepherd had claimed the rug by her bed, his breathing rhythmic and deep like a lullaby. If she stirred, he would gently rest his muzzle against her arm. If she cried, he would nudge her until she stopped. Emma called him the big soldier, and to her, that's what he was. One evening just after dusk, Emma stood at the window, staring out into the blue-gray twilight. The trees bent slightly in the wind, their needles brushing the glass like fingers. "Daddy?" she asked quietly. Logan, sitting on the couch with an old paperback, looked up. "Yes, sweetheart?" "Did Mommy really love me?" He put the book down. His heart didn't skip. It sank, like it always did when she asked something deeper than her years. He knelt beside her. "She loved you more than anything in the world. She was brave and kind, and she kept your picture with her every day." Emma looked down. "She said, if you ever came back, I should forgive you, that you didn't mean to leave." "I didn't," he whispered. She nodded. "I know now." Outside, Ranger barked once, a soft signal. A squirrel maybe, or the wind shifting. Logan stood and opened the door. Ranger stepped inside, shook snow from his coat, and trotted to Emma. She curled beside him on the floor, resting against his side. That night, as snow piled up outside, Logan lit the fireplace and told her a story. Not from a book, but from memory. "Your mom and I met on a transport plane," he began. "She was helping a wounded soldier. I thought she was stubborn. She thought I was impossible. We were both right." Emma giggled, sleepy and small beneath a blanket. She used to hum when she stitched up injuries, said music made pain go away faster. "Like magic?" Emma asked. He nodded. "Yeah, like magic." He paused. "And there was a time," he continued, "when I didn't think I could be a dad. I thought something inside me was broken. So I ran. I ran from her, from you, from the fear." Emma didn't speak. "But she didn't run," Logan said. "She stayed. She fought for you. And Ranger, he fought for me." At his name, Ranger lifted his head and placed a paw gently on Logan's knee. "He kept me alive. In the worst places, the darkest nights, he kept me from giving up." Emma yawned. "He's a good dog." "He's the best," Logan said, smiling. By Christmas, the cabin had changed. Not in structure, but in soul. The pine tree in the corner had handmade ornaments, mostly paper, some drawn with crayons. A star made of 2 twigs bound with string leaned slightly to the side. A hand-lettered card sat on the mantel. "To Mommy in heaven, I'm safe now." Outside, deer prints crisscrossed the yard. Emma left tiny carrots for them, claiming they were for Santa's reindeer. Logan didn't correct her. On Christmas morning, Emma tore into a shoebox wrapped in comics and found 3 knitted scarves, one pink, one olive green, and one dark gray. "They're from Ranger," Logan said. Emma laughed. "He can't knit." Logan raised a brow. "You sure?" She threw her arms around the shepherd. "Thank you, big soldier." Ranger licked her ear. Later that day, Logan stood at the fence line with a cup of coffee and watched the mountains in the distance. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of memory, of peace, of something like grace. A soft voice called behind him. "Daddy!" He turned. Emma stood in the doorway, arms open. He walked back toward her. The snow kept falling, but it no longer felt cold. Sometimes, the greatest miracles don't come as lightning in the sky, but as a whisper in the snow. A little girl who still believed, a soldier who thought he was broken, and a dog who never stopped guarding the gate. In a world full of noise, chaos, and loss, sometimes all it takes is one quiet soul, furry or human, to guide us home. Maybe it was fate, maybe it was love, or maybe, just maybe, it was God reminding us he never left. So, if this story touched your heart, please leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to believe again, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hope, healing, and the kind of loyalty only a dog and heaven can give. May God bless you wherever you are watching from, and may every soul still waiting at the gate be found.